Good morning, everyone. It is the second day of our Western Canada EU Connect series. My name is Jeanette Jackson. I'm delighted to be opening up the conversation today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Foresight, and I think we're going to have an incredible conversation about everything Agtech with our partners from the EU. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. It is with gratitude and respect that we acknowledge that the lands on which Foresight operates are the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. As Canada's cleantech accelerator, we are committed to accelerating the growth and impact of cleantech ecosystems across Canada. And of course, agriculture, agri-food is no exception to these efforts. Over the last 5 years, we've supported over 840 ventures in our accelerator programming, and we take a lot of pride in partnering with industry to help them accelerate their net zero transition through partnerships in innovation scouting, capital, and export programs. Foresight's expertise has helped secure over $1 billion in capital for these ventures. They're trending now at over $325 million in revenue. And of course, we want to see the scale of these efforts impact high-paying jobs, and we're seeing over 6,800 green jobs since inception. And none of this is possible without partnerships across Canada and globally. Our domestic and international engagement includes collaboration with over 2,000 stakeholders and partners. International exports are a key component for growing Canadian cleantech innovation, and events like these are critical to connect our world-leading agtech innovators with the European market, and vice versa. In the face of population growth, changing consumer preferences, declining available arable land, and the growing climate uncertainty, innovation is an urgent imperative when it comes to agriculture and agri-food. Canada has the opportunity through clean tech innovation to increase food production and resiliency, and to reduce and even reverse waste and emissions. This will improve income across the value chain and enhance our competitive positioning in the $4 trillion global agriculture market, while supporting the growth of our clean tech sector. And that's why I'm delighted to kick off the conversation on our agri-specific sectoral initiative, which is branded for us under AgriNext, which uses programming and network building to establish a supportive environment that accommodates the longer development cycles for clean tech innovators and the need for technology and sector-specific knowledge. So thank you all for being here today to explore the agtech market and opportunities in Europe. I'm excited to learn how to unlock these opportunities and hope you discover potential partnerships through this conversation as well. On behalf of everyone at Foresight, I would also like to thank our event partners and supporters from the province of British Columbia, ASEP Portugal Global, the Consulate General of France, Ireland, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Portugal, Switzerland, in Vancouver, Hub Brussels, the EU Chamber of Commerce in Canada West, and the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Canada West as well. We will begin the panel shortly, but before that, I am delighted to introduce you to one of our partners who's helped bring this together, Nicolas Baudouin, Consulate General of France in Vancouver, to give some opening remarks. So over to you, Nicolas.
Thank you, Jeanette, for the kind word of introduction, and good morning to everyone here in Vancouver. Good afternoon to all our friends back in Europe. The first thing I want to say is a big thank you to Foresight. It was a bit of a bumpy road to get there, but we finally made it. So really, from the bottom of my heart, and I think on behalf of all my EU colleagues and Andreas from our friend from the Consul General of Switzerland, a big thank you to you. And to allow us to provide us a larger opportunity to raise the profile of the EU here in BC. Foresight is a key player in BC's innovation ecosystem, and that's why we have built the relationship with you since 2020 as part of our collective effort here as European consulates in Vancouver to raise awareness about business opportunities between both regions in the field of clean tech and innovation. Today's event follows on this work and is a great opportunity for companies from BC and Europe to engage in practical, meaningful, and impactful conversation. Why is it relevant and hopefully useful? Because our two regions share the same economic agenda, that is enabling a sustainable energy transition and greening our economies with a strong focus on innovation and technology as a way to bring about economically viable solutions to achieve these goals. So my first message here is to congratulate you for joining us today here in BC and in Europe, and to take part to this webinar, because I think that BC and the EU are natural partners for companies on both sides who wish to explore new market opportunities, scale up, and expand. The second thing I'd like to highlight is that it's the right time to do it. Janet, you provided already a very good number of figures which show the dynamism of the ecosystem in BC in the field of Agtech. And what I would like to echo is, firstly, we have a framework which is conducive to the development of our trade relations. This framework is the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, which is implemented since 2017 between the EU and Canada, and means, in a nutshell, easier access to the Canadian and the European markets. Secondly, because agriculture is at the nexus between climate change, food supply, and ultimately resilient societies. That's why supporting innovation and helping to address the challenges in the Agtech sector are priorities both there and in the EU. And I think when we face more or less the same challenges when it comes to redesigning supply chain to reduce carbon footprint, facilitating the adoption of technology by farmers, or facilitating B2B matchmaking to help companies internationalize. That's what we're making today. If I briefly say a word on France and remove my hat as the chair of the European Union here in Vancouver, I think we're trying to address these challenges through massive investments. Last year, 2.3 billion euros were allocated under the France 2030 strategic investment plan to support projects in 4 sectors: digitalization and data management, agricultural robotics, plant breeding and biological control, capture of methane. And this is working. Just to give you 2 examples, one of the first European platform for online purchase of agricultural equipment, seeds, etc., which is called Agriconomy, was created in France. A second example is the French unicorn Insect, which is one of the world leader in natural insect protein production, and which is operating the largest vertical insect farm in the world. And today I was checking, and it's a coincidence, but Vivatech, which is one of the largest European innovation and startup event in Europe, is opening today for the upcoming 3 days. 149 countries represented, 500 innovation, total of more than 25,000 visitors on site. This is just a few examples of the dynamism of the Agtech sector in the EU, and we'll hear more about what is happening with examples from my dear friends from Belgium, Ireland. I see Frank here and Robert there, and France, of course, with Antoine. So to recap, same priorities in terms of innovation-driven economies, same ambition in terms of supporting our ecosystems to scale up and internationalize. That's why today's event couldn't be more timely, because it will help all of us to learn more about the key features of our respective ecosystems and build connections between companies. My last word is to thank again the BC government for its support, Foresight, of course, Janet personally, and all your team, Astrid and Lee, Elizabeth, for your support in putting together this event. And on behalf of all my EU colleagues, I'd like to say how grateful we are that this has been made possible thanks to you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about opportunities to connect between both sides from speakers in the following sections, and I hand it over to Astrid for the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Now I'm going to chime in and just introduce one of my colleagues and our team members, Stephanie. She's going to take over managing the panel this morning. Stephanie is the director of our Alberta operations and really working to bridge the gap, or I should say not bridge the gap, but work collaboratively with all of our partners across Western Canada to profile, Canadian agritech innovation. So Stephanie, over to you, and I'll look forward to following along. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in the EU. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you our panel. First, from Ireland, we have Kevin MacDonald. He's the professor of crop science and biosystems engineering at the University College Dublin. From France, we have Antoine Desplat, head of the accelerator Hector. From Belgium, Alexandra Van Dun, co-founder of Urban Harvest. And from Canada, David Gaudier, VP of Commercialization at Natural Products Canada. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kevin to begin his presentation.
Great, Stephanie, thank you very much for the introduction, and to colleagues. Thank you, good morning, and also good afternoon to the rest of our colleagues from the European Union. So I thought it might be useful today to take you through a little bit of what we're doing in AgTech in Ireland and where we're coming from it in that regard. And there's been a number of factors that I suppose that have driven the development of agricultural technology within Ireland. Certainly what we have seen in the last 6 to possibly 8 years is a growing understanding of the opportunities associated with digital agriculture and how that's played into how companies have developed not only their research profile, but also their portfolio and their offerings going into the marketplace. So there's been a lot of focus in the last number of years on how we can help companies, how we can help them accelerate into that space. And the opening up of the digital agricultural space has enabled companies to have more of a collaborative relationship. So, for example, companies that were primarily in the ICT sector have been moving in to support ag companies. And similarly, ag companies have been sharing their skills, their information, their data with ICT companies to try and improve and enhance the offerings that have been going on and to enable them to expand and to develop their program. So what has happened is within the, I suppose, financial and research space, there's been a number of offerings from the government and from organizations to try and help support that organic growth and to try and build those synergies and those relationships. So we have supports from the national government, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, Department of Marine, for example, that would be closely related to these sectors, but also Department of Energy and Communications in helping support companies grow and develop in the agtech space. And we have the science organizations, so Science Foundation Ireland, ERCSET, a number of the other companies, or a number of the other funding agencies, developing more of an interest in the agtech space and helping support companies. And the supports that they offer are at a range of different scales and different sizes, from quite low offerings, for example, companies that just want to have a quick look at solving a problem in the agtech space. So you're looking at a low capital investment and they're looking at maybe just some research help to start it off, to helping companies build partnerships, longer term partnerships, 5 and 7 year research partnerships where companies and the Science Foundation Ireland will come together on a joint project. And also with that, we're helping companies support targeting EU funding as well. So even just some quick examples of the agtech companies that are growing and developing, and there's a range of them within Ireland. This is only a very tiny snapshot of them. What you'll see is they're covering everything from sprayer technologies into infrastructure such as milking parlors and development of milking parlor technologies with next generation technology embedded in them, to looking at companies that started out in, for example, rubber slat matting and have evolved into using newer technology to develop slurry additives and to develop feeding additives to enhance how the whole dairy system has been managed from an infrastructural point of view, but also through to a management of the nutrients associated with that as well. And we have specifically online companies that have started to support, for example, livestock machinery sales, particularly through COVID. This was an opportunity for a number of companies to have an online offering, and they took full advantage of that. And I suppose farmers, growers, and companies are now more comfortable with trading and dealing with technology online, and also accessing their customers online as well. So linked to some of those companies, and you can see there's a range of their sizes and operations. I just wanted to explain to you a little bit of some of the research that we have going on. And this is, again, it's a small snapshot of it. And I really only wanted to mention some of the ones that I'm involved with, because I can explain them in a little bit more detail if you wish to, and then nobody can give out to me because I'm only explaining about some of our own projects anyway. So we have, for example, some of the larger ones, which are running on 17, 18 million euro type projects, such as the CONSIS one, which is this joint partnership between one company, Origin Enterprises, and one funding agency, which is Science Foundation Ireland, where they came together to try and develop a way of sensing crop growth and crop development and building platforms that Origin, as a company which operates throughout Europe and South America, that company could then use these tools and these platforms to try and manage their customer base and manage their online offerings to farmers, growers, and companies more effectively. Linked to that, we have other projects looking at, for example, greenhouse gas changes, such as crop gas. We have Divine, which is an EU funded project looking at, if we are going to gather data across the agricultural operations on farm applications, what's the protocols that we should use? How can we synergize some of those protocols to make the most sense out of them? We have another project, Farm for More, which is an EU LIFE project, which is primarily looking at trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for farming technologies and farming applications. But within that, we're using biorefineries to try and extract, for example, proteins from grass. And these are proteins that we can use to feed to monogastrics. So we're substituting soybean imports with the grass protein, and we're using different sensors throughout that biorefinery process to manage that system for us. With the crop health one, which was a technology that we developed, and we're now licensing it hopefully to a UK and to an Irish company, which is using remote tools to sense disease and progression within cereal crops, so that you can make an intervention in a more timely manner. And looking at machine learning tools to help us predict when we should have an intervention, for example, a spraying intervention within a cereal crop. Or looking at biostimulants, and there's a lot of interest in looking at biostimulants from a seed coating point of view to look at enhancing crop growth, root architecture in the early stages within the seed development, and will that produce a healthier crop, which hence will have a lower requirement for interventions from fungicide or disease management point of view. That crop health one that I just mentioned there, that actually has spun out a little bit more into a United Nations project, where we were asked to look at presenting a project through the Food Systems Summit in 2021 last September. And the focus around that presentation was to see, is there a way that we can start to pool data more effectively from a range of different companies and organizations that are in the agri space? And the idea being, could we have a more democratic approach to the use of agri data, that it wasn't just held for one particular purpose, but we could use it for multiple applications. So if you're a smallholder operating within a particular country, and we're looking at a number of countries from in Africa, in the Middle East, we're looking at countries in Central America. And what we're doing is seeing they have different demands and expectations. But if you're a smallholder, you might not have access to a lot of data, but if you pool the information on a more regional level, then you have opportunities to try and manage and protect the agricultural activities in that region. And if you protect agriculture, you're protecting the use of the soil, you're protecting water consumption within that area, you're protecting the economics associated with that, and you're also protecting food supplies within that area. So pooling this agricultural data together in a democratic approach to the use of data is a project that we're using, which we're calling Agtech, or AgProtect, sorry, and it's been run through the Global Digital Agriculture Association. And what we're trying to do with that system is we're pooling together data from a whole range of sources and bring them into a central decision support system. Now, we've all used decision support systems before, and they're really useful. But now what we're saying is we can broaden out the sources of data that we could possibly use. Absolutely, we could get remote data, we could get pick up data from the Internet of Things, deploying of sensors, but we can also use individual crop agronomists, walkers, growers, everybody who's out walking their land, looking at their crops, to use mobile phone technology, 2G and 3G technology, to send images or a text message about their crops, their performance, the water status in the soil, the crop emergence dates and so forth, and you start building that and pooling that together. And if you can do that, then suddenly you have a much larger pool of data to work from, and you can start make better predictions about vulnerabilities of crops in a particular region, vulnerabilities to drought, vulnerabilities to floods, such as, for example, if you know there's rainfall events occurring, so you've analyzed data over the past 20 years of rainfall events, but if you've no crops growing in the region when you get most of those rainfall events, maybe you should look to try and introduce more cover crops, looking at more alternative cropping patterns. So rather than having more monocrops, looking at breaking up cropping patterns and integrating different types of varieties across different regions. It makes it a little bit harder from the management point of view, but from a management of the soil and the resources, it makes it a lot more successful to try and utilize those resources. So we're looking at combining these tools in a more open pattern and using this data pool to collect the data and to have it more available to a range of users. And we're building programs for a number of demonstrator countries to how we might be able to demonstrate ag protection techniques and ag protection tools using a whole range of data companies, but also companies in ICT, in finance, in banking, in agronomy as well. So that's a really quick overview of some of the areas that we're looking at. And in the Digital Ag Association, what they're doing is they're building these structures and building these relationships for companies so that they can engage with smallholders, with growers on the ground. Some of the smallholders are looking to forward sell their crops, so they're looking for financial advice. Some are looking for disease, for looking for crop nutrition points of view, crop nutrition health as well. So there's a range of opportunities that we're starting to see if we open up access to the data, that we can open up the opportunities available for both companies, but also for the smallholder growers as well, to benefit from the skills associated with combining that data together. So that's a really quick overview of some of the ag tech space that's happening within Ireland. If you have any questions, I'd be delighted to try and take them, or if you want to email me afterwards, you can drop me an email and I can follow up with you afterwards. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. And then, as you know, we'll be having breakout rooms after the panel discussion. So any questions you have for Kevin, please feel free to join his room and ask him questions about what's going on in Ireland. Next up, we have Antoine to tell us about Hector. I'd also like to remind panelists to limit your presentations to 5 minutes if possible, so that we have plenty of time for panel discussion and so that we can get into our breakout rooms on time. Thanks again. Antoine?
Yeah, hi everyone. Do you hear me well? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, perfect. Thank you. It's really useful for us to get, I think, this large overview, because we may sometimes be French focused. And yesterday there were a major event in France called LF Day, which was the, I would say, a reunion of the biggest European Agtech startup. And I think, as it was said, it's moving fast on the in Europe on these topics. And I'm very happy that we can all share maybe our insights. So just trying to get control on the presentation. Okay, working. So I'm working at Hector. So what we do at Hector is that we are trying to find solution to all the biggest agriculture and food challenges. To do so, we have a pilot farm of 600 hectares nearby Paris. We made training programs for farmers. So you can see us as a MBA or a business school for farmers. And then we have entrepreneurs, program for entrepreneurs in agri and food tech. And we believe this is by building a whole ecosystem of investors, farmers, corporate researchers, that we will be able to solve all the major challenges we have in front of us. So to give you some figures, so we have 600 hectares, 250 hectares are in regenerative agriculture. So we are a pilot farm. We modelize, test, and spread our models to everyone. And we have 50 hectares of experimental field that we give to the startups so that they can test, learn, and iterate on their product. We also give them access to working space and meeting rooms. So I think the key is to understand our mission. So really, we want to help to build a European champion, and I would say I would hope to say in a few months, international champion. To do so, we started by launching an accelerator program, helping 80 startups in 2 years to scale up. So we really have an intentional approach, saying today a French company, if they focus only on French market, they are dead. They will never raise funds. They will not make it enough turnover. So we push them really hard to cross frontiers. This is the first project we have launched. We have other incubators or later stage program in mind so that we can really help all the entrepreneurs or everyone wanting to launch a company in the sector. So in 6 months, we have been accelerating more than 30 startups. And we generally help startups that have raised, that are quite mature. So there are in average 10 people, 10 employees by startup, and we help them become much bigger. And yeah, maybe the of ecosystem, which is interesting, I think with everyone here, is that we have specific ecosystem. I think the most important for us is to focus on having a bit everyone from investors, entrepreneurs in ag and food tech with different level of maturity and experts. It can be farmers, it can be scientists. So we try to gather all these people around Hectare. So maybe I try to make it short. I think there is a question. Is Hectare all open field, or there is any control environmental agriculture, greenhouse? I'm not sure to understand well the question, but if it's about the experimental field, so everything we do is in organic and regenerative agriculture. So when a startup wants to do a test, they need to fit these criteria. And so for instance, a startup will ask us to do one test on a parcel, testing biotech solution, and they need another parcel using pesticide. We cannot make it. So yeah, we need to be aligned and protect our soil. So I hope it answers your question.
Yeah, the question really was if it's all open field agriculture, or is there any part of it that takes place in greenhouses? Like, are there opportunities for a startup to work in greenhouses?
So today it's open field, but nearby our farm there is a big greenhouse space. So we partner with them so that we can offer indoor infrastructure when startups need it.
Thank you.
So I think I'm good. At least I try to make it short. I will be more than happy if you have any questions during the panel, or maybe to send me an email so that we can take a few minutes more.
Thank you so much, Antoine. Next, we're going to hear from Alexander.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Just for information, you hear probably some music in the background. It's because I'm at the Fair Green Tech in Amsterdam, and they are launching the after fair stuff, so with beers and everything. But I'll try to focus on the topic. Co-founder of Urban Harvest. We're active in vertical farming. Vertical farming, maybe for the people that don't know what vertical farming is. We develop technology, both hardware and software, to allow people to grow crops in a fully controlled environment, in which, as it stated, we optimize climate depending on the crops, name it temperature, CO2, humidity levels, etc. And instead of using one layer, so like open field or greenhouse culture, we will stack layers above each other and simulate the sunlight via LEDs, which will be then programmed on a specific wavelength. Stephanie, maybe next slide, because apparently I don't have control. But maybe what's important, why do we do it? It's well, because we see full soil agriculture, you still have greenhouse agriculture, but we launch it because, well, climate is changing. It's unfortunate, but we heard it in the small introduction of Kevin. Well, there's sometimes too much rain or whatsoever, so you need to adapt. Secondly, well, the population is growing, so we will need more food in specific areas. I'm not saying that there is not enough food to feed the world, but it's not well distributed. So we will have to produce it more locally in order to have, let's say, food available for everybody. And then, well, thirdly, well, technology is evolving. There's more data available. In our case, LEDs become more efficient. Insights become more clear. So let's say those are, let's say, the three drivers why we are active in vertical farming. To focus then on Urban Harvest itself. So next slide, please, Stephanie. We launched in 2017. Still a small team, so 5 people. It's on purpose that we keep it small. Why is that? Well, we have very, very solid partners that we work with very strongly. So if you would add those guys with who we work on a daily basis, it would be way more. 2 R&D labs currently happening in Brussels, in which we can test whatever we think is needed. And while data, it's everywhere, in every sector, data becomes more important. Agriculture, both full soil, in greenhouses, but also in vertical farming. Let's say the belly feeling of the farmer needs to get out of it and needs to be facts driven and based on data, instead of like, well, we have done this over the last 50 years. Unfortunately, patterns are changing, technology is changing. And well, that's the reason why, well, at Urban Harvest, we develop, well, that technology, CEA technology, specifically for strawberries. But well, we've done other projects as well in the propagation of cuttings in the leafy greens area with projects in Belgium, in the Netherlands, some coming up in Denmark, where pushing our boundaries also overseas into Canada, to the Middle East. So going rather fast, and I think it's needed to stay on top of the peloton. My last slides before, let's say, being happy to answer questions here or in the panel. What do we offer? Strawberry farms, as you can see here on the left-hand side. So those are strawberries, or we developed the technology to grow strawberries in a fully controlled environment. So no need for sunlight, no need for rainwater or whatsoever. Rainwater, of course, is collected because you want to be as sustainable possible. But so that's one of the solutions. In the middle, you will see what we call research data containers, where farmers can really test and get the data before scaling into commercial production. And that's, let's say, the third product to commercial production. So we build vertical farms, turnkey, both hardware, software, where we can assist people with their challenges. And we do that worldwide thanks to our partners. So if there are questions, very happy to answer them, help you along, insights, name it, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Lastly, we're going to hear from David.
Thank you very much. Just checking to see if I've got control yet. I appear so. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here this morning. Just a few words about Canada. So I think it's obvious to many that Canada is blessed with natural resources. So in terms of agriculture, we are quite a powerhouse producer in the world. We do have some great research expertise across our universities, our government facilities, and in industry, and are known for having very good government support programs for research. We do have a good global reputation, we think, overall, in terms of the quality of food products that we produce. We do have a world-class regulatory system. And as much as our companies complain about how onerous it is, once you do get your regulatory approval, it does have a very good brand and trademark and power across the world in terms of the quality and safety of our food products. Where we have fallen down, though, is in the commercialization of a lot of that research and development. So essentially, we were created out of that recognition from a program called Centers of Excellence of Commercialization and Research back in 2016. We're a relatively small team spread across the country, and we are embedded and work very closely with organizations with similar mandates in our provinces, but we try to bring a regional perspective to help companies and clients in various regions of Canada connect to the resources across Canada, because we are big, but a small population. And one of the issues we do have is regionalization in terms of our focus on the world and our support system, but we really need to bring all of our national assets together. So we do work, again, here's just a sampling of some of the organizations we work with. The ones in the top line are what we call our node partners, and we do need to update this slide. You can see Foresight in the top line. That should be in the big line as our latest node partner in BC, and we have recently hired a regional director in British Columbia to help build out that relationship. So it certainly takes a full village to make this happen. So what do we include in natural products? Well, this shows all of the different sectors that natural products could be involved in. We define it as biological solutions to a number of issues. And that would include many things related to sustainability and clean tech, such as bioproducts, bioplastics, upcycling of waste streams into value-added products, et cetera. But we do have focus on those biological innovations. So we don't invest in hardware, software, precision agriculture. Sorry, Alexandra, not in vertical farming. Those are all very important aspects of the overall value chain, but we needed to focus on something. And we see that some investment, actually a lot of investment, is coming from the IT software world into agriculture through some of those opportunities, but we're still seeing a lack of early stage capital and development of opportunities that are involved in those biological solutions. We are trying to build a cluster, bringing together various stakeholders and aligning those stakeholders through 4 initiatives. I'll go through very quickly. So it all starts with our advisory services that we give to our clients. We do have commercialization programs to help companies address early stage problems, such as doing field trials or clinical trials to validate their technology that are holding back from getting financing. We have cluster building exercises, which is bringing together a community of stakeholders to help solve a common issue that they all have together. Our innovation hub are our activities to bring together various stakeholders in our cluster. And we always felt that having a private investment fund was an important part of our model. So we do put money behind our words. We have made significant investments over the past 5 years. Here's just some of the numbers. So over 1,000 clients that we've served. We've made 13 investments through our investment fund, 32 investments through our commercialization programs, and have received more than $20 for every dollar that we have committed to those opportunities. So what comes next? We were refunded last July through the Strategic Innovation Fund, another initiative that Canada has put forward to help stimulate the commercialization of innovation. And we have created a standalone investment fund. Our first fund is closed. So we've created NPC Ventures that has a target of raising $50 million of capital. And the two of them work very well together, where the not-for-profit will help continue to build and develop a pipeline of investment opportunities for NPC Ventures. So that's essentially who we are. And again, I'll be looking forward to the discussion and participation in the breakout panels.
Thank you, David. Listening to each of your presentations, it really has occurred to me how similar the problems that each of us face are. A lot of the technologies and ideas that you guys have presented today are themes that we hear every day in Canada as well. Thank you again for your participation and for sharing with us. I want to get into some questions with you guys, and thinking really broadly, when we're talking about ag tech in your respective country, What accomplishment from the Agtech community are you most proud of? Why don't we start with Kevin? Kevin, what are you most proud of that Ireland's done in Agtech?
I guess, Stephanie, the fact that being an island, we've had to deal with more logistical problems than other companies or other regions when they go to expand. But that has also made us maybe be a little bit more proactive in how we cooperate. So I think one of the things that we have that has worked well for Ireland is the enterprise supports that we have in place to help Agtech companies get going. There's a great network of supports in individual countries. So if there's a new company and they're going to France or Germany or Canada or wherever, there's usually a network in there that will help support them get off the ground. And I think for companies here to access that network has been really good. I think there's been a lot of time and effort put in by both companies, but also by government agencies to support that and to drive it. And I think that works well. And I think for Agtech companies, that's been a tremendous pipeline in enabling them to expand.
Thank you, Kevin. Antoine, what are you proud of that France has done in Agtech?
I personally believe that the most precious thing for an entrepreneur is talking to another entrepreneur in the same sector, whether they are exactly at the same maturity level, because in this case, they share generally exactly the same issues, or more mature one, I would say, because it makes them gain time. And I think we have been able in 6 months to gather a community of more than 100 entrepreneurs with different state of maturity. And now made normally in different countries, because we are getting very close to Wageningen University in Holland and start a life accelerator so that we can actually go faster on that. And I think today we provide a lot of value by connecting the right founders between each other. And I think that make them gain time and also have good moment together.
Thank you, Antoine. In Belgium, Alexander, what's Belgium doing right?
Not much, but no. I think where, let's say, Belgium and the Netherlands, I think, share a lot is knowledge and expertise in the agricultural field. Although, let's say, our countries are rather small, a lot of agri-tech technology is coming from our, let's say, two countries. So what I'm pretty proud of is, let's say, all the knowledge expertise coming out of university spin-offs, research, applied research centers, that those are in the end pretty accessible. And as soon as you get into those networks, well, the new world opens up. So let's say pretty happy to be a Belgian in that respect, and being able to, let's say, to have access, let's say, to always, let's say, the latest technologies or latest developments very in reach. And let's say in an hour, max 2 hours, we have visited all the research centers if need be.
That's wonderful. David, you mentioned that Canada has a robust regulatory system and lots of government support. What else are you proud of from Canadian Agtech?
Yeah, I'd say in the current sort of, I guess, explosion of alternative proteins and desire for plant-based proteins, that all started basically here in Saskatchewan. So maybe it's a local piece of pride, because I'm located right here on the campus of the University of Saskatchewan, where basically pulses and lentils, which were nothing 25, 30 years ago, are now a huge part of the crops that we produce out here. So all those chickpeas and lentils and other peas that are the primary sources of that plant protein for those products were developed here and are now being commercialized here. And I think the pride point comes now with the fact that there has been a great deal of international investment in pea processing facilities. We're seeing 3 new crush facilities coming in around canola. That's more related to the biodiesel side. But I think it's the recognition now that the world sees Canada as this agriculture powerhouse in the place that they need to be and invest in to be able to get those value-added products. So there's probably, I could go on and on forever, but I guess if there's one thing that's relevant to what's going on today, that would be it.
Thank you, David. And I'm going to give a plug for our friends in Saskatchewan. With respect to lentils, the last time I was in Saskatchewan, I tried a delightful beer that was made from lentils. So if you ever happen to be in Saskatchewan, I believe it's called Rebellion is the name of the brewery that makes a lentil-based beer. So proteins everywhere are doing great things. So my next question kind of digs into really what successful ag tech looks like in your country. In an ideal world, if we're talking about gaps within the ecosystem, what gaps are you looking to fill? What does the ideal ecosystem in your respective countries look like, as well as a worldwide ecosystem from ag tech? David, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, so I think what we've been talking about for a while is the recognition that we no longer want to just be shipping raw grain in trains to other parts of the world. So I'm going to be a broken record here, but we really need to make sure that we are shipping the final consumer goods, outside of the country. So I think that's really the goal. And at this point, I'll mention the protein superclusters. So one piece of good news for Canada 4 years ago was the federal government committing $1 billion to 5 what they call supercluster initiatives. And although $1 billion is still small compared to some of the initiatives in Europe and other places, it really did set the tone that, we are sick and tired of just being the hewers of wood and drawers of water. We produce all of the products here. We should be processing it here. We should have a robust startup community that is using those feedstocks to create value-added products. So I think there is a bit of an attitude shift there, and we are starting to get some recognition that this is a good place to invest because it pretty much is a greenfield in terms of that value-added activity. So if someone wants to build a processing facility, someone wants to build a food company, this is the place to do it based, again, on all of the resources we have and the ability to produce those feedstocks.
Thanks, David. Alexander.
Well, David, totally agree what you're saying. So on Canada, we're looking actively to go there as well because of the things you mentioned there. So already agreeing on that. Well, if you look on the Belgian side, what would be ideal? I think, well, especially Europe, and the big greenhouses, we're very, very reliant on gas. So what we are trying to push in there is, well, especially for our business, is, well, vertical farms are using electricity. We see ourselves as a sustainable application for sustainable energy, because again, you see the electrification of mobility is really ongoing. We're getting away from fossil fuel for that. I think for agriculture, we'll also at a certain moment let go that gas and make sure that we, let's say, use our resources in a way more efficient way. And again, electricity, you can generate it in so many ways. Well, again, Canada, hydropower is there in so big quantities. You have the seas and the sides for wind, sun is also shining. So I'm totally convinced that at a certain moment, well, agriculture, and especially the controlled, the CEA world, will have to move to electricity or hydrogen, but let's say that's the same as the storage of electricity, to making sure that, let's say, that industry also becomes a bit more cleaner. Although there is a lot that is ongoing to make it more efficient, but at a certain moment, I hope we will let go gas and produce locally in a sustainable manner, with, of course, for vertical farming as an application, but not necessarily the only application. I believe that electricity can be used also in the other ways of farming.
Thank you. Antoine.
Yeah, I really agree with what you say. I think Canada has a big strengths, and United States in a way as the same. What we don't have in Europe is that you have big fields. And I mean, scaling an Agtech startup in Europe make it much more difficult for many reasons. That only in France, it's a much more fragmented market. So for instance, we help a startup in Australia. So it's a French company, but they first operate in Australia, and you see the business model and their capacity to go quickly on very big fields and is easier. So that's a major strength for me that you have. And so us, we have a big challenge in Europe is also regulation, you know, because often we say, yeah, you need to scale in Europe, but actually you need to do country by country. So that's a major pain that we are trying to solve, because there is regulation, of course, topics, but also a go-to-market cultural mindset, etc. So we didn't solve it yet, but we are trying to. And yeah, this will be my answer.
Wonderful, thanks. And lastly, Kevin, the ideal world.
So for us, what a successful Agtech sector is looking like is really having the connections, because there's a lot of small startups and then there's a lot of spin outs from some of the bigger companies. So it's making sure that there are the connections to enable them to succeed. And whether that connections are supporting each other in export markets or in manufacturing, in developing in-house products. So even as David was saying, let's not export the raw ingredients, let's make the final products and export that instead and add the value added to it. But for small companies, that's hard to do. So to be successful and for the Agtech community to be successful, we really need to leverage the connections that we have and ensure we can build them to support getting finance, getting export credits, getting opportunities to get into new markets. So it's the connection. That's what will make the Agtech sector successful.
That seems to be a theme that we're hearing, connectivity and networking. One of the challenges that startups in Canada face is a funding gap, ensuring that they're able to get private sector funding as well as government funding. I'd like to know what each of your regions has done in the way of supporting the startup communities with respect to funding. What are they doing right? What would you like to see more of? Antoine, let's start with you and let's talk a little bit about how vertical farming and your initiatives have been affected by funding.
So Alexandre, that's it. You are expecting an answer from Alexandre on vertical farming, or?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, Alexander, sorry. Talking about the vertical farming and how funding's affected that.
Well, let's say vertical farming is still a young market, so not yet, let's say, very matured business models and proven track records in there. So let's say it's all let's call it heavy risk capital that's coming in there. So let's say from our side, well, we were lucky in the fact that our business model was or is still pretty solid. So we were able to attract also even some banks to lend us money to scale the business. On subsidy sides, there are some subsidies, but let's say the government here is not totally known to be a very reliant source of funding. So in my ideal world, there would be first for novel ideas, there should be way more capital or way bigger access to capital to launch new startups together with potential subsidies. But let's say I prefer not to rely on public funding. Whereas what I would prefer to see, instead of having subsidies, I would prefer to see a simplified administration for young startups in order for them to focus on their business instead of having to focus on, let's call it paperwork, which in the end creates not much value. So I would say there that there is still a long way before, let's say, vertical farming will become a major trend, especially in Belgium. And that's the reason also why we see our projects are more in the direction of North America, the Middle East, and further into Asia, Why? Because there is a real deep need for our technology due to climate constraints, due to more access to capital, that we, let's say, find our success outside of Belgium instead of being very heavily present there.
Thanks, Alexander. Antoine, now to you. Your business is actually very similar to what Foresight does. How have the startups that you work with and the companies you work with been affected by funding and by cycles of funding?
So I will give you the answer I asked to Aston Venture yesterday. I asked exactly the same question. The answer me actually it affects us for series mainly B, C, D, not really for seed and series A. So I will just give you this answer because I'm not expert at funding, and I think I've heard from many funds exactly the same answer this past few weeks. I think the challenge we have actually about funding is from both sides. So make sure we create a momentum for Agtech and foodtech investors, because there is opportunities and they need to, in some ways, change the way of understanding Agtech and foodtech companies. What is tough for them is that they do not have a model to follow. So it's more risky today. So our role is to help them to de-risk startups. So first point. And secondly, on entrepreneur side, to be transparent, we still have a lot of entrepreneurs coming from Agtech who do not really know VC game. So also we are here to help them acculturate to what really VC needs, because that's really important to help them put themselves in the position of a VC. So I think we have a challenge for both sides. Of course, the easiest one is helping entrepreneurs understand better the funds than the contrary.
Thank you. Kevin, you talked about data science and you talked about the wonderful initiative that you guys are doing with the UN. How has funding affected the projects and the initiatives going on in Ireland?
Yeah, funding can be challenging for any startup or for any company, particularly in the Agtech sector. And I think one of our roles in the university is to try and help support them by, co-joining with them on the research and development side of it to add value to it. But one of the important things that we need to protect within that is the intellectual property rights, and to ensure they flow back to the companies, that they're not tied up in funding legislation requirements, but that we allow the companies to utilize the IP that comes out of the research for not only that project, but for also future projects that they might have as well. So I think by allowing the company to control and own the IP, that puts them in a stronger position when they're going looking for funding, because they have more value added behind them. It's not just the individual activities, but it's the sum of the parts. It's the IP behind it and the future that IP will bring to the company. So supporting that for companies, I think, will help them access funding more effectively. And with the research teams, I think we need to help them target more funding by being their research arm, so they don't have to invest in research, but we're there to help and support them in that area.
You brought up a great point with IP. I think we could have an all-day discussion on how IP has affected startups in different regions, and particularly those that are coming out of universities. David, lastly with you.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer because we deal with so many different companies and everyone has got their own unique capital path. But if I were to generalize, I would say the investor enthusiasm around food and agriculture is largely on the consumer packaged goods side. So for companies that have any kind of better for you product, whether it be higher in protein or lower in sugar or have more sustainable packaging, their development life cycle is pretty short, and it's all about how do they scale their sales and scale their production. So those are simpler models. If you can show rapid increase in sales and get to $1 million in your first year, then you're probably going to be able to find someone who will invest in you. For the more exciting technologies, the earlier stage ones, and I'll use the protein as the example, it's very, very difficult because you might be looking at a 7, 8, 9 year pre-commercial development cycle for your product that involves multiple iterations of scale up, going from bench to maybe 1,000-liter production, 10,000-liter production. And you've got to be able to find a way of financing that and then hopefully have a product at the end that customers are going to want to try, start developing offtake agreements, and then be able to raise capital for the large facility. But there's a tremendous gap within that value chain. What we're trying to do is help people go from what we call TRL level 4 up to maybe 7 or 8. So allow them to do those 1,000 liter, 2,000 liter production runs, have enough product to get out to a customer along with their intellectual property. Then maybe there's enough for an early stage angel investor to want to get them, their next level of scale up. Where we're all facing a big problem is how do you go from using a toll manufacturer to get that 1,000, 10,000 liter to getting the capital, the $50 million, $100 million in some cases, to build your production facility to produce your novel ingredient. So this is a huge issue for all of us, whether it be access to fermentation facilities or processing facilities. It just doesn't fit the typical venture capital model or private equity model. And we're going to be in trouble if we don't figure that out. There's a lot of companies that are going to be able to go so far with contract manufacturing, but not be able to find the capital to build the large facilities. So we do need foreign investment to help us with that. We do need creative financing models to do that. We're just doing all we can at the earliest stage to try to help the entrepreneurs put their best foot forward to hopefully stand out amongst all of the others in the crowd.
Thank you, David. And thank you to everyone on the panel. We really appreciate your perspectives and you sharing a little bit about Agtech in your countries this afternoon with us. I think we're ready to go into breakout rooms now. So I'm going to turn it over to Astrid, who will be setting us up in breakout rooms. Okay, I think we're all back now. My apologies if any of you got cut off mid-conversation in the breakout rooms. I do encourage you to connect with our panelists on LinkedIn and through the email addresses that they've provided. Again, thank you very much to panelists for participating. Over the past 2 days, we've presented this series to unlock clean tech opportunities between Europe and Canada. The opportunity is huge. The challenge is urgent. Canada is a global leader in clean tech innovation with a large and established presence and customers already across the globe. We held the first instance of this series back in 2020. 2 years later, we continue to build and scale opportunities for Canadian and European SMEs, now in water tech and ag tech. Thank you so much for attending our event series. Please stay connected with us and attend our upcoming events. Until next time, we wish you well.